There comes a time when you walk away not to punish them, not to play a game, but because your soul demands it. And the moment you disappear, everything shifts. At first, he may not notice. Maybe he thinks you'll be back. Maybe he thinks you need a break. But day by day, something changes. The silence becomes louder. The absence becomes heavier. That text he didn't send, he regrets it now. That moment he didn't appreciate, he replays it in his mind. That love he took for granted. It haunts him. You see, people don't value what they have until it's gone. When you were there, you were convenient, you were predictable, but now you're a memory he can't control. And that's the hardest part. He doesn't get to decide how this ends. Now, he's left with questions. Did she move on? Does she even think about me? Was I the problem all along? And let me tell you something, he doesn't have the answers. That's what eats at him. But while he's stuck in the past, you are building a future. You are becoming stronger. You are evolving into the version of yourself that doesn't need validation, doesn't chase, doesn't settle. Because when you walked away, it wasn't just a decision, it was a declaration. A declaration that says, I know my worth. When you walk away from someone's life, your absence becomes a mirror they can't avoid. It forces them to sit with their own thoughts, to wrestle with the silence you left behind. While you were there, they may have taken your presence for granted, assuming you'd always be available. But the moment you step away, something shifts. At first, they may not even recognize what's happening. They tell themselves they're fine, that life goes on as usual. They stay busy, they distract themselves, they convince themselves that your absence doesn't matter. But day by day, the reality sets in, because the truth is, people don't realize the impact of someone's presence until it's gone. Suddenly, the messages they used to receive are no longer coming. The calls they ignored are now missed. The small moments of kindness, love, and support that seemed ordinary now feel like a luxury they no longer have. And that's when reflection begins. They start to replay old conversations in their mind. Words they brushed off now hold meaning. The laughter they once took lightly echoes in their memories. They begin to see, with painful clarity, the little things they once overlooked. They think about the times you were patient with them, the moments you stood by them, even when they didn't deserve it. And the weight of that realization becomes heavier with each passing day. Regret starts to creep in. They question their actions, their choices, the way they treated you. Maybe they didn't appreciate you enough. Maybe they pushed you away without realizing it. Maybe they assumed you'd always be there no matter what. But now, they're left with nothing but their own thoughts. And those thoughts don't let them rest. The most powerful part of absence is that it forces people to confront their own behavior. When you were around, they could escape accountability. They could rely on your forgiveness, your patience, your willingness to always be there. But now they have to sit in the silence they created. They have to face the consequences of their own actions. And the longer you stay away, the deeper the reflection goes. They start to wonder if they were the reason you left. They question if they could have done things differently. And once that realization sets in, it's not something they can shake off easily, because regret lingers. It doesn't fade overnight. Your absence is more powerful than your words. It speaks louder than any explanation you could ever give. It forces them to see you in a new light, not as someone who needed them, but as someone who had the strength to walk away. And that alone changes everything. They will remember you not just as you were, but as the one who left an imprint on their soul. And no matter how much time passes, your absence will be a reminder of what they lost, a reminder that will echo in their mind long after you've moved forward with your life. Regret creeps in slowly, silently, almost imperceptibly. At first, they might not even notice it. It's just a quiet whisper in the back of their mind, a nagging feeling that something is wrong, but they can't quite place it. They go about their days, continuing with life as they know it, assuming that time will smooth over the gaps left behind by your absence. But it doesn't. Time only amplifies the things they took for granted. It starts small, fleeting thought in the middle of a conversation. An empty moment when they realize they don't have someone to share it with. They'll tell themselves it's nothing, that they're just overthinking, but deep down they know it's more. As the days stretch into weeks and the weeks into months, that thought begins to grow. It shifts from a passing concern into a heavy realization that something is missing. At first, they convince themselves it's nothing. Maybe it's just a new routine they're adjusting to, or maybe they're just busy. But as the days go on, the silence grows louder. They start to think about the things they didn't appreciate when they had the chance, the times you were there for them, the little acts of kindness they brushed aside, the support they never fully acknowledged. In those quiet moments of reflection, regret finds its footing. Regret doesn't announce itself in grand, dramatic ways. It doesn't shout or demand attention. It simply lingers, hanging in the background like a cloud that refuses to leave. It starts to settle into their heart and mind, and they start to realize how many moments they let slip away without giving them the value they deserved. That text you sent that they didn't respond to, it haunts them now. The times you reached out only to be met with silence. They wonder now why they couldn't just respond in kind. And that time you stayed up late talking, sharing pieces of your soul. They start to wonder why they didn't listen more closely, why they didn't appreciate the gift of your words when they had the chance. The regret isn't always obvious. It doesn't scream, "I messed up." But it builds inside them layer by layer until it becomes impossible to ignore. It's in the small moments, the unreturned calls, the empty spaces in their day, the absence of the person who once filled it. They begin to replay the moments when they could have acted differently. And with each replay, the weight of their inaction grows. They begin to understand, finally, the value of what they had. But by then, it's too late to change anything. As the days go by, they begin to wonder if they will ever be able to make it right. Regret is a powerful thing because it doesn't just make you wish you had done something differently, it makes you question your own judgment, your own decisions. It's like a seed planted in the mind, growing roots and slowly twisting and turning until it becomes all-consuming. They start to wonder if it's their fault you walked away, if they were the one who pushed you to the point where you felt you had no choice but to disappear. It's a hard truth to face, to realize that you could have done better, been better, and now there's no way to go back. And while they might try to mask it, put on a brave face, carry on with life as usual, the regret will follow them. It will be there in the quiet moments, in the times when they least expect it, reminding them of what they lost. Regret doesn't wait for an apology. It doesn't need a second chance. It just settles in like a shadow and refuses to leave until they've come to terms with the fact that what they lost was never just a person, but a part of themselves that they'll never get back. When you walk away, something shifts. It's not just a physical absence, but an internal transformation that both you and the other person feel in different ways. They may not immediately recognize the power that you've taken back, but the truth is, the moment you decide to step out of their life, the power dynamic changes in ways that can't be undone. You may not have intended it, but in that single moment of choosing yourself, you've taken control. And that's where the power truly lies. At first, they may not even notice. They may think everything will go on as usual. They may believe that you will always be there, that you'll always come back when they need you. But when you leave without looking back, their world begins to crumble in ways they didn't expect. The balance that once existed, where they were the ones who dictated the terms of the relationship, now becomes unbalanced. The power shifts, and it's no longer in their hands to determine what happens next. The realization hits them slowly at first, and then all at once. They no longer have access to you. They can no longer take you for granted. You are no longer something they can pick up or discard at their whim. And that realization is as freeing for you as it is devastating for them. They'll try to regain the power. They'll reach out, sending texts, making calls, showing up unannounced, doing everything they can to pull you back into their orbit. But here's the thing about power: it can't be reclaimed once it's been lost. Every attempt they make to get you back only reminds them of their loss. The harder they try, the clearer it becomes that you've moved on and that you've chosen yourself over them. You found strength in your absence, and that strength is far more compelling than any effort they make to pull you back into their world. This shift in power is difficult for them to understand. They were used to being the one with the upper hand. They were used to knowing that no matter what happened, you would always be there, ready to forgive, ready to give, ready to be available. But now they face the uncomfortable truth that you're not coming back unless it's on your terms. And that's the part that hits hardest they don't get to decide. The decision is no longer in their hands. For you, though, this shift is not about revenge or punishment. It's not about proving anything to them. It's about reclaiming what you've always deserved: respect, self-love, and the understanding that you are worthy of more than what they were giving you. You've learned the importance of walking away, not out of anger or hurt, but out of self-respect. You've learned to let go of the belief that you need anyone else to validate your worth. And when you let go, when you stop chasing after what was never meant for you, you step into a power that can never be taken away. What's powerful about this shift is that you are no longer bound by their whims, their demands, or their lack of appreciation. You are free to become the person you were always meant to be: whole, unshakable, and no longer dependent on someone else's approval. The longer you stay away, the more it becomes clear to them that they lost something irreplaceable. But here's the real truth. It's not just about what they lost, it's about what you gained. You gained your peace, your freedom, your own voice. You gained the ability to move forward without looking back. This power shift is not a temporary one. It's permanent. It's the moment you choose yourself over everything else, and once that decision is made, there's no going back to the way things were. You've created a new reality for yourself, one where you control the narrative, one where you get to decide who belongs in your life and who doesn't. And for them, the only question that remains is whether they will ever understand the power you now hold. But by then, it won't matter. You've moved on. You've found your strength. You've reclaimed your life. There's something undeniably powerful about silence. In a world that's constantly speaking, making noise, pushing, and striving, silence becomes a rare and almost sacred space where growth happens without anyone watching. When you step away from the noise, whether it's the opinions of others, the demands of the world, or the distractions that come with constant interaction, you create room for something far more powerful to take root: personal growth. It's in the silence that you are forced to face yourself without the filters, without the distractions of validation or approval from others. When you disappear, when you go quiet, that's when you start to hear the whispers of your true self. And as much as the world might want you to be loud, to be seen, to be constantly busy, it is in the moments of stillness that you begin to evolve in ways you never expected. At first, silence can feel unsettling. It can feel like an emptiness that demands to be filled, a void that makes you question whether you're doing the right thing. It's tempting to fill that space with noise, to find distractions, to pick up the phone, to fill the silence with anything that keeps you from confronting the truth. But growth requires stillness. The silence is not your enemy, it's your opportunity. It's the moment when you can stop seeking external validation and start searching for the strength within you. When you are silent, you stop looking for answers outside yourself. You stop asking people what you should do, how you should feel, or who you should be. Instead, you learn to listen to the deeper voice within you, the one that doesn't need to be loud to be heard. In that silence, you begin to understand the depth of your own thoughts and emotions. You start to realize that the answers you've been searching for were always within reach, but you were too busy listening to the wrong voices to hear them. During this time, you'll begin to rebuild yourself from the inside out. You'll discover new strengths you didn't know you had, and you'll uncover parts of yourself that were buried under years of distractions. It's in the quiet that you find the space to heal, to release old wounds, and to cultivate a mindset that doesn't depend on external circumstances to feel whole. When you are no longer distracted by the world's demands, you can truly see who you are, what you're capable of, and what you need to let go of to move forward. The beauty of growth in silence is that it doesn't need an audience. You don't need anyone's approval to transform. Your growth is internal, not for show, not for validation. It's for you and you alone. There's no one to impress, no one to compete with, no one to judge your progress. And that freedom is what makes it so powerful. It's the freedom to become the person you were always meant to be without the pressure of fitting into someone else's mold. Silence doesn't mean inactivity. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The silence forces you to dig deeper, to search within yourself for the answers you've been looking for. You may not see the immediate results of this growth, but that's the beauty of it. It's slow, quiet, and sometimes invisible to the outside world, but it's always happening. As you sit in the stillness, you start to shift. The old habits fade, the old doubts fall away, and a new version of yourself begins to emerge. And while the world around you may continue to rush, to speak, to move, you remain grounded in your silence. You understand that growth isn't always loud. It's not about making big declarations or achieving instant results. Sometimes growth is about taking a step back, creating space, and allowing yourself to transform in the quiet moments. It's in the stillness that you lay the foundation for the person you will become. And when you re-enter the world, you do so not as the same person you were before, but as someone who has been forged in the silence, stronger, wiser, more in tune with who you truly are. There comes a moment in everyone's life when you realize that your return is not dictated by anyone but yourself. Whether you've left physically, emotionally, or mentally, the decision to come back is always in your hands. It doesn't matter what circumstances led you to walk away or how long you've been gone. The moment you choose to return, it will be a choice you made with full awareness and understanding of what you want. Leaving is often the easy part, or at least the part that feels necessary at the time. Sometimes it's the result of disappointment, pain, or recognition that what you had was no longer serving you. In those moments of departure, you're seeking clarity, seeking space, or simply searching for something that feels more aligned with who you are. But what most don't realize is that while walking away is something you can do without anyone's permission, your return is entirely yours to decide. The world has a funny way of expecting people to come back, whether it's a relationship, a job, a friendship, or even a sense of belonging. Society pressures you to forgive and forget, to reconcile, to return to the people and places you once knew. But what's often forgotten is that your return is not a transaction or a requirement. It's a conscious decision that belongs to you. You do not owe anyone your presence, your time, or your energy unless you want to give it freely. It's important to understand that returning is not about pleasing others or fulfilling an expectation. The moment you return to something or someone, you are doing it because you feel ready, because you've reached a place where your mind, heart, and soul are prepared for what's ahead. It's not about going back to the same place with the same mindset or the same version of yourself. It's about choosing to move forward with a fresh perspective, understanding that growth often happens when we return to situations with new wisdom and clarity. Your return is about reclaiming your power. It's about walking back into a situation, a place, or into a relationship with the understanding that you are no longer the person who walked away. You've changed, evolved, and transformed during your time apart. And when you choose to return, you do so from a place of strength and self-awareness, knowing that your boundaries, your needs, and your desires are now more important than ever. The return isn't just a physical act. It's an emotional and mental one. It's you re-entering a space with the assurance that this time you're doing it on your terms. Sometimes people wait for permission to come back. They look for signs, for some sort of invitation, as though their return depends on the approval of others. But the truth is, your return is yours to decide, and no one else has the authority to dictate it. You are not bound by past mistakes or failures. You are not obligated to return to people or places simply because they expect you to. You are only obligated to yourself. There's power in the act of returning. It's not weakness or desperation. It's strength and choice. The decision to come back is a sign that you've taken the time to heal, reflect, and decide what's truly worth your energy. It's an acknowledgement that despite everything you've learned from the past and are now ready to create something new. A return doesn't mean that everything will be the same, but it does mean you are willing to embrace the new chapter with courage and confidence. And if you choose not to return, that's okay too. The decision to stay away is just as powerful as the decision to return. It's another choice you make in the name of your growth and your peace. But the key to all of this is understanding that no matter the decision, it's always within your power. You get to decide how your story unfolds. Whether you walk away or come back, it's always your choice. And that's where your true strength lies. Your return is never a matter of obligation, it's a matter of choice. And that choice defines you more than anything else.